So to continue our working with the pickups, we're going to add the monsters to tiled. So it's going to be very much the same as how we made the pickups. So if we look in the pickups where we added the tile set and then added in the property of kind and gave it an identifying value. So we'll do the same thing now with adding in the monsters. So we can click to add in a new entity here. And this time I can click on the monster. This gives me now my monster tile set and bring that in. We can just leave the name as is. That'll be fine. Make sure embed is clicked every time you do this. Now I go into the monsters and let's go ahead and edit this. So if while I am doing this, and I can zoom in using Command or Control plus or minus to make it a little bit easier to select things, that if I could just decide that one frame is going to be the one I'm going to draw for placing it on the map, but knowing that at times I have fat fingers, so I can Command or Control click to select a contiguous area. So then I could select all of those and say that should be the bat. But what I really want to do, and not select the empties here, is select everything, click plus, and once again we will add the same property of kind into our tile set. Now I'm going to drag and select and then hold down Command, click two more. We'll call this one bat. And then I will select the ghost. So we're putting these names in because this is going to allow us to be able to identify them and pass this value to the different constructors. Oops, we missed one. This guy's a skeleton as well. And so we need to pass these values into the constructors for each of these to set the different animations so that we also then know which animation should play for which type of monster, so that we are able to make it work in our project. So just about finished selecting all of these. Oh, it's not kind, it is spider. Okay, so they're all selected. Make sure to save that, so that data is now saved with that tile set. Now I can go back into my object here. Let's add my object, my tile map. Let's add another tile layer. And this one will be monster layer. Now we can put spaces in the names here. We don't have to do it with camel casing because we'll be referencing this layer name inside of quotes when we're accessing it in Phaser in our JavaScript. So that's why we can get away with that and don't have to use camel casing. You certainly could. It's entirely up to you. So now I can go and using the stamp tool decide I'm going to, let's go put a couple bats on screen here. So we'll put a bat and a bat and a bat and a bat. Let's go grab a few ghosts. And because we named all of the sprites for each kind of creature, then we do not need to worry about which tile on here that we end up grabbing while we do this. So we can grab any, because it's not, well, don't want to put it in the walls. I want to make sure that we are positioning them in allowable squares in our project here. So yeah, we probably have way more monsters than we need for this tiny map, but that's okay. We'll make it work. So we've now created all of these different enemies that are here, so I can save that, click over, and then I am going to export. I like to use export as here because as I've been working through different iterations of this, I want to make sure it's going in the correct folder. And then it's going to replace the existing purple map objects video.json file. It's going to ask me, are you sure? I'll say, yeah. Then it's going to even double check and ask me, are you sure? And I'll say, sure, why not? It's all good. All right, so that was loading with the old enemies. And we're not going to be loading the old enemies anymore. We'll be loading the new ones. So our JSON here has been updated with it. And now we need to do something with that when we try to create our group of enemies here. So we have the enemies group that has the original enemy, the enemy that is a chaser that's following us. And now here, this is where we're going to, instead of just positioning them through math or code and having to specify which one we're working with, it's going to be much easier to access them instead by referencing the tiles on here. So we have to do it the same as what we did with the tile map here, which means we need to create one more layer. And that layer that we're going to create, the same way we created the pickups, we need to grab that layer, and it was called monster layer. So now going back here, const monster layer will be equal to map dot create static layer. This time we'll just call it monsters. Actually, I don't think I want to do that because I have my monsters atlas. So we'll just call this, monster layer, because that's the name there, forgetting what I was referencing. So the name here is the name I'm putting in my quotes because that's referencing the named layer inside of tile. Does not really matter. Because we're not loading the artwork directly, because we will be playing animations in their place. If these were just static images that we wanted to play off or to reference from the tile set, then we would also need to be grabbing our other tile set. So instead of grabbing purple, we would need to then, and this is the same discussion we had during the pickups, working with the pickups, is because we're putting animations in place of where these tiles are, we don't need to load that tile set image. We could, but we don't need to, because we're going to be using it as atlas animations, where we do it with the monsters, or we did it with the pickups. Well, the pickups were sprite sheet animation, but same concept. So now we have access to the monster layer, and it's time to then do something with that, where we then create. And it's going to be the same as what we've done here, where we need to gather some information from this. As was discussed when working with the pickup layer, it is possible to grab the index ID for a given tile. So in this data, there's 500 values because our tile map is 500 squares big. So it is 20 squares tall, 25 squares wide, and each one of these represents a value. So we can see that we have a bunch of 1080, then 1106, and that's corresponding to the tile ID for these different monsters that we are putting into the game. So we could create our objects using that for the enemies, but that's not going to be a great way of doing it. So right now I am going to comment that out because we're not going to add our enemies in that manner. Instead, we're going to do similar to what happened with the pickup. So we have monster layer for each tile, and then reference that tile object, and then we will have our function that is going to then populate everything with that. So what we first check once more is if the tile properties kind is not equal to undefined, and that means if the tile has let's see, oh sorry, wrong thing. If the tile then is not registering as 0, because the zeros are now undefined, then it's going to give us our different values. So what I can do right now, just for kicks, is we're going to log out tile properties.kind to make sure things are reading correctly. So let's save that, load, and we can see it now loaded 5 spiders, 3 skeletons, 5 ghosts, 7 skeletons, 4 bats. So it's kind of in the order as it works its way around that tiled map, imagining this is the first one, 0, 1, 2, 3, as it works its way through, and then spider, 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 skeleton, 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 and then ghost, 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 ghost. So that is how we're generating these values as they wander in here. Yeah, this game's going to be pretty brutal with that many enemies wandering through, but such is life, It's better to have the near impossible game than otherwise. So first we need to get our values of where to position it. So the exact same as working with the pickups. It's the only thing that will really be different here, of course, that we're attaching it to our enemies group instead of our pickups group, or coins versus gems, is that our constructor here will be not 3e. This is where it's going to be a little bit different, because now we make a new enemy, if I can spell it correctly. So noticing on the pickups, we created the object here because we don't have a pickup class that we're working with. We don't have a gem class. We don't have a coin class. We just made generic sprites. So because we made generic sprites, we used create. So that's kind of the distinction that we have here. Where the enemies, we have an actual class object that we're working with. Could we have a pickup class object? Absolutely we could, and maybe there would be some value in doing that if those objects were more than just simply something to bump into. But because that's all they do, that's all their existence is something to bump into, they don't have any other activity beyond that, well, it doesn't really make sense to work with that. Now I need to, and the code hinting here is nice. It's telling me I'm looking for my texture key, so that's good. So let's go see, once again, what did I load for my sprite sheet for it, and it is monsters. So we have our monsters that we are going to be loading in as part of this. I'm going back into my code here. It's important to make sure we keep our naming. Probably should have called it Monster Atlas because that's what it's referring to. It is our Atlas. Now I'm going to just say right now the enemy does 10 damage. And then now the type. Again, looking at my code hinting because it knows it wants these parameters from the class. So the type. Now if we were using TypeScript instead of pure JavaScript, TypeScript we would actually then specify those types. So I wouldn't say type any. It would then give us what kind of values are allowed. And in this case, it's looking for a string, and this string would be the kind of monster. So this is where we do our tile.properties.kind. So we pass that value in. So we're passing in damage, we're passing in the kind of object, we're passing in what graphic we're going to use to work with that. And if we look up here, it's the same values. The scene, X and Y. Oh, and I didn't have to go all the way up. I could have just scrolled up the screen here. What is my texture key? how much damage I want it to do, what kind of object it is. I'm going to just reduce these down here a little bit on those two enemies because that's going to cause some issues if we don't. Because there's so many enemies, we're going to die really fast anyway. And then let's go this dot enemies dot add, and we'll add this object to our enemies group, just like what we did here. And then let's go body dot set collide world bounds true, and just so we can tell that we know where these are coming from. And I'm going to give these a tint. We'll just make them bright green. So now, and I just want to verify enemies are in the world layer there. Good. Just checking the collision. No error messages. And nothing loaded. Bummer. So I'm looking here. I don't get all of my items. So let's try and track down what is happening or why is this not working. So what I'm going to do is just log out enemies because it's like they're not showing up. But now let's look through here and see what is happening here with it. It's telling me I have 36 children. So there's 34 that we added in tiled, 34 monsters that I put over there in tiled, and then I have the other two I've added to the enemies group. So they are there. So we're trying to figure out what is happening here. Now, if I go back, turn that off, let's turn back on the original code, save this, and see if that works. And okay, that works. It loaded all of those bats. So something is a little bit off, so let's comment that out. Let's pull this back and try and see where we're missing out here. So it looks about the same. So what I'm going to do is remove some of the variability here, and let's try and figure this out. So let's go and hard code where we are going to be putting these, and just to make it remove that variability. Since we have a ghost and slime, I'll just stick in the skeleton. Now let's see what happens. Okay, so there's a lot of skeletons there all spawning in one spot. Okay, so something is wrong. So we know that we were able to log out the property of the tile.properties.kind. So we knew that worked when we logged that out. And okay, get a bunch of green monsters, but they're all coming from the same spot. So when I'm looking here, trying to figure out where I am putting it. Now, let's see. So it looks the same, but wait, that's green. So look here, this isn't green. Oh, because this is it's a method, so we have to actually put parentheses there to call that value. Because we had all of our monsters, they're there, so we have to kind of sometimes figure out why. So we go through, log things out, look at the values that show up here, remove variability, go back to old code, let's see what was working. Okay, wow, that's a lot of green nastiness here. And I don't want to be there, I want to be here. Okay, wow, yeah. Yeah, this is kind of hard. If this is how I have to collect everything, we might want to adjust the speed of all of these enemies that are running around because they are motoring. I'm going to turn off the green tint. Let's just see how it looks then. Wow. Yeah, that's going to be brutal. And everything is going really, really fast. So what I'd like to do is to modify the monsters so that we pass in different values for their speed. And one of the ways that we could do it is we could add another property. And then inside our enemy, we can pass in that speed value. So to do this, I'm first going to bot back over to tiled. And while I'm in tiled, we'll go into our monster sheet here. Okay, and we have, let's select everything, because that way it means I don't accidentally forget to put it on one of the tiles. So we'll select all of them. We'll put in speed value for it. Now these tiles here do not need it because they are empty, so we will subtract that custom property. Oh, there we go. I have to select the tile and select the property and then hit minus. Okay, easy enough. Alright, so with that we'll select some spiders here, and let's see, spiders go at a reasonable rate. So we'll set slime has a speed of, we'll give slime a speed of 10, and then we'll work our way up there. So slime, then skeleton, then, or slime, ghost, skeleton, spider, and then bats are really fast. So we'll give these a speed of 40. So that means we really want to avoid the spiders. Now, you could give each one a different one, so then if you're not careful when you make it, you'll be like, whoa, what just happened? So slime, we get a speed of 10. So I can see, it kept that speed value. So select these skeletons. Skeletons will get a speed of 30. Ghost gets a speed of 20. And we'll let the bats get a speed of 50, so they are smoking. And if we don't like these values, we can change them. Okay, so now let's put those in. We'll save that so it's part of it. Go back over to our item here, and let's export. We're going to replace the JSON, so it will put in this new value into it. Replace. We'll have our second warning. Yep, I'm positive I want to do it. And if I go into the JSON and we go all the way down, we'll see that we have a property of kind and now a property of speed on these different items. So that's good. Now we just need to put it in. This.properties.speed. We'll need to, because now the classes are going to be looking for it, so slime, the following one, will give it a speed of 5, so it's extra slow. I'm going to give this one enemy 2. We'll set the tint on this so it's easier to tell which one this is. So we'll just do it green. This is the bright green. Ghost, now it needs a speed, and we can just give this one. So this is going to be a slow ghost. We'll give it a speed of 10. Okay, so we got those. Save that. Now we probably, if we have our code up, we get some errors because it's like, what is this property speed you speak of in game scene? The ghost has no idea what you're talking about. So let's rectify that. We go back into our enemy here. And in our constructor, we're going to pass in speed. And enemy follow. Speed. Now, if we go into enemy here, with that speed, this dot speed is equal to speed. So that gives us our value. Now we need to use that value. So if we wander into update, constant speed is going to be equal to this dot speed. Okay, good. And let's see who is still unhappy. Game scene. Oh, we probably need to finish saving some things and work on using it properly in our project. So we've passed in the speed. We're passing in speed value for our enemies. And once again, this happened to me once before when I'm trying to do this, when I hit tile properties, it changes it to this properties. And that's not what we want. Hey, no error message. Wow, look at that. So we have some critters there moving around here, so we need to, it seems that they're all still following the same speed, so they haven't updated correctly yet. So I went in to my game scene and I modified my speed to 1. Not this, tile.properties.speed. Save it to get the correct speed. But what's happening inside of the enemy is I have this value of this.speed equals 64. So we put it in at one point, and that overrides where the speed was set up here in the first part of the constructor. So that caused it to change. So I believe that was set up at one point just to speed up the whole thing. If we get rid of that statement, we don't even need it. Now when I save this, now we'll see that some objects are going faster, some are going slower, and that makes it more appropriate. And now if I refresh everything, I will see there's the chasing one here. It wants to chase, oh, killed it already. It's trying to chase me. Yeah, this is, if this were truly our game level, I think we would need to set it up with considerably more gems, or the gems would have to respawn periodically. Maybe they have spawning locations or random locations that they go into so that we're able to do it. Or maybe sometimes if you run into an enemy, it causes something to spawn. That could be an option too. So it's however you want the gameplay to work out.